What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about the fallacy of being strict and disciplined. The reason that I'm having this conversation today is because earlier this week, I was having the same conversation with my lifting partner. We were talking about how people look at him and him and I have, first of all, I've known him since I lived in Kentucky, essentially, which was, I think I was 13. So that was 27 years ago that I moved to Kentucky. That's a long time. 27 years ago. So I've known him for 27 years. We played football together for half of that. So from like seventh grade through college, we played football together. And him and I have been in the weight room essentially since then. He is also, I'm not a trainer anymore. He is a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer, or I owned a fitness studio up until last year. So him and I had very similar paths, and we've always kind of been in shape. We had speed bumps along the way. There was a time where I was close to 250 pounds. I was 247 pounds or something to that effect. Just for comparison's sake, I am 190 now, so you can imagine 60 extra pounds on me. Now, I played football at 220, so that's not super crazy, but nonetheless, when people look at me, they just think that I've always been this size, but I have lost 60 pounds in my life, which is something that most people have not done. Kyle also, I think he was like 220 at some point, and he's 190 now also. So we've been higher, we've been lower, and we've been in between, but we've always been somewhere. We've always looked fit. Like, to a person, the average person, they look at us and they're like, hey, you're a fit person. And as such, they think that we are the strict, disciplined people. And then they take those labels and they take them away from themselves, and they look at them and they're like, hey, strict and discipline are something that I don't have. And it's something that usually people equal to being bad. Strict equals bad. Discipline equals bad. Because in most people's mind, being strict and disciplined means I don't get to have fun anymore. I don't get to have my potato chips anymore. I don't get to go out and drink anymore. I don't get to go out and whatever the thing is that you're so worried about being deprived of. That's what people think about whenever they think about being strict and disciplined. But the truth of the matter is, every human being that does some level of routine, which is pretty much most human beings, is strict and disciplined. Which I'll explain why here in a second. But going back to Kyle and I, so we were having this conversation and we were kind of bouncing back and forth. And it wasn't really until after the conversation, because we were talking about how, someone had said to him, oh, you must be really strict about what you do. And people have said that to me multiple times. You must be very strict. You're very disciplined about what you do. And, usually my answer has been, yeah, I guess so. I mean, sure, whatever. But lately I've been thinking about it differently. And then after we had that conversation, a light bulb kind of went off in my head. And that light bulb was that everyone is disciplined and everyone is strict. And the problem is that most people either don't direct it, or they direct it incorrectly, or they try to direct it, but they don't recognize the true barrier. So there's kind of three levels to that, which we'll also get to in a second. So why is everyone strict and disciplined? Well, let's start with definitions, because that's the most important part. Anytime you're talking about anything, it is important to start with definitions. What am I talking about, and what are you talking about? If you remember, or you've listened to the definition game that I did a while back, then you know why this is important. Because there are many times when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're talking about something, but you're talking about two different things, even though you're talking about the same word or the same idea. So when I say strict, in your mind, what you automatically think is strict in eating good quality food, or in exercising regularly. Like, that is what most people wrap their head around when it comes to being strict. Discipline is the same thing. Discipline equals exercising regularly, eating good regularly, doing these healthy things regularly. That's what discipline equals for people. So what is strict and disciplined? So if you go and you look it up, you'll find a number of definitions, of course, but here are a couple for strict and disciplined to help clarify what we're talking about and why everyone is strict and disciplined. Strict equals rigorously conforming to a principle, a norm, or a condition. A principle, a norm, or a condition. Discipline equals orderly or prescribed pattern of behavior. So if we look at strict, rigorously conforming to a principle, a norm, or a condition, everyone conforms to, everyone has a normal routine. They conform to the conditions around them. They conform to principles that they live by, and they conform to norms of society. Generally speaking, if you think about the things that you do regularly, you do them regularly. Like when you get home, there's an automatic set of things that you do. When you wake up in the morning, there's an automatic set of things that you do. When you get to the weekend, there's an automatic set of things that you do. If you like to play golf, for instance, you are strict about making sure that you have a tee time set up on Saturday morning with your buddy so you can go out and drink. If you like going out for Thirsty Thursday, you make sure that by Thursday afternoon, you have it set up that you're going to go out with your friends and you're going to go out and you're going to drink. If you like sitting on Tuesday nights and watching the new release of the newest TV show, whatever that is, and you sit and you eat a bag of potato chips while you do that, then you are strict about doing that. You have an orderly sequence of events that happen. You get home, you sit your ass down on that couch, you turn the TV on, you grab your bag of chips, and you eat. You are strict about it. You are also then disciplined about it because they kind of go hand in hand, but you're also disciplined about it. Again, going back to our definition, discipline equals the orderly or prescribed pattern of behavior. So in our personal lives, we have generally an orderly pattern of behavior. It's not necessarily prescribed, but in our work life, we have a prescribed pattern of behavior to some degree. So if you work for somebody, it is prescribed. So you go to work, they give you your list of things to do, you sit down, that's your prescribed pattern of behavior, and you do it. And when you get off of work, you go home and you follow your orderly pattern of behavior. Again, you go, you grab your bag of potato chips, you sit down on the couch, you turn on the TV, and so on and so forth. So why do I say that everyone is strict in discipline? And at the same time, I'm referring to these things that are not supportive of healthy behaviors and not supportive of healthy outcomes. Well, it is because everyone believes that they are not strict in discipline. And so they believe that they can't do the thing. They believe that they can't exercise regularly. They believe they can't eat good regularly. They believe they can't sleep good regularly. They believe they can't put their phone down. They believe they can't do whatever else you believe you can't do because you don't have the discipline to do it. You don't have the strictness to do it. I'm not a strict kind of person. You are, because if you're a human being, especially in a westernized society, you have a routine and you are strict about that routine. And you're disciplined in following through with that routine, whether it is deteriorating your health or not. And if you are in a westernized society, it's likely that you're doing a routine that is deteriorating your health. I don't say that as judgment. I say that as a fact. So if you want to turn that around, you can turn that around. And guess what? You already have the discipline and the strictness to be able to do that. But the problem is one of threefold, which I talked about earlier. Either you're not aware of it, you're not directing it at all, or you are directing it incorrectly, or you are not aware of the true barrier to the problem. You're trying to direct it, but you find yourself off the path or not making, you make some strides and then all of a sudden something happens and something gets in the way and then you get bumped off the path. And you look at whatever external event happened and you look at that as the problem. You're like, well, my life's always crazy. So how in the world am I supposed to start exercising? Or how am I supposed to start doing something different? Or how am I supposed to start, changing my marketing? Or how am I supposed to start this business? Or whatever it is. My life's always crazy. but you just don't know the true barrier. So it's one of those three things that you have going on. Again, it's you have the discipline and you have the ability to be strict. You already are. You already are. Whoever you are, whoever's listening to this, you are already strict. As a matter of fact, I know that to be true because if you're listening to this, I'm assuming that you've listened to this a number of times, which means you have a routine of listening to this podcast. So, and I'm assuming you listen to other podcasts, so you are disciplined in listening to podcasts at certain intervals when they come out. So I know that to be true because of that. And of course, you don't connect those together because you think of strictness and discipline as something outside of you. Because it is in this other realm of life that you currently aren't a part of. It is this healthy and fit or this prosperous realm. You know, even people in business, people look at people in business or successful people in business. They're like, oh, they're really strict and they're very disciplined in what they do. And that's why they have that level of success. Again, you have it, you're just not directing it correctly, or not directing it at all, or you think that something else is the problem. So first and foremost, please recognize that you have the capability to do what you want to do. You have the discipline inside of you. You have the willpower inside of you. You have the strictness inside. Whatever you want to define it as, you have it there. It is currently being used. It is currently being utilized, and you're potentially a master of it, just not in an effective way, which is okay because that means that all you need to do is direct it differently, or wake up and direct it in some way, or recognize that it is not something outside of you that is the problem. So now that we've laid the groundwork, I'm going to go ahead and grab a drink of water because I am parched after all that. I just got finished working out. Yes, I am disciplined, so I worked out this morning. AKA I have the habit of working out, which is what's really happening. Anyway. So that's where we are. I beg you to understand that you have the capabilities inside of you already. They are there. They are available to you. They are part of you. They are inside of you. So quit telling yourself that I just don't have the discipline. I just don't have the willpower. I just don't have the follow through. I just don't have those things because you are disciplined about things right now. You have the willpower to do things. You will figure out a way to do the things that you want to do now, if something gets in the way. And you follow through on the things that you want to follow through on, or the things that are built in on that you're following through on. So you just have to figure out a way to redirect those energies toward this new thing that you're trying to achieve. And that is important to grasp onto. This new thing that you're trying to achieve, this new level in business, this new health outcome, this new weight loss, this new nutrition plan, this new exercise program, this new marketing strategy, whatever. This new thing that you're trying to do is new. And because it is new, it is not currently strictly in your routine. It is not built into what you do. It is not disciplined into who you are. It is not part of your daily follow through or weekly follow through. So you have it currently, you have these capabilities, but this new thing that you're trying to do is just not currently part of those things. So let's break down the three potential problems that we have when it comes to not directing our strictness or our discipline, and how we can start to fill those gaps. So, like I've said a couple of times, you either are not directing it at all. You're not directing that discipline at all. It's there. You're using it, but you're using it unconsciously. Or you're directing it in the wrong way, and you're just not changing it. Or, finally, you're not recognizing the true barrier, the thing that's really standing in your way. You're doing something, and you think that that something is the problem, or you think that something outside of you is the problem, but you don't understand the true barrier. And until you understand the true barrier, the real thing that is standing in your way, then there's a good chance that no matter how you direct that discipline or strictness, it's not going to matter. And it's important that you make progress because that's what keeps your motivation going. That's what keeps you wanting to make progress. Progress equals happiness. Progress equals fulfillment. And it's important that you recognize true barriers, real barriers that are happening instead of trying to cover up those barriers or point at something else so that you can keep making progress, so that you can keep moving forward, so that you can keep having that fulfillment that you want in life and then reach those goals that you want. So let's look at the first level because that's where everybody will start whenever you're starting any kind of journey. Whenever you're starting anything, you're starting at a level of you're not directing it at all. You're not directing that discipline or that strictness or that follow through. You're not directing it consciously. So when you set a goal, you are then you're in the beginning processes of starting to direct that discipline. The problem is it takes a little bit of mental effort, right? If you're unconsciously doing things, it doesn't take any mental effort. I get up, I brush my teeth, I drink my coffee, I get in the car, I drive to work, I do the work that I'm supposed to do. I get out of the car, I go back. All of a sudden, you have this idea to start your own business. So that is the beginning process of you starting to direct your discipline and direct your thinking, and then you can start to direct your strictness. So number one is just being aware of what you're doing. It's just being aware of what actions you're taking. If you're trying to lose weight and you're not really trying at all, but you have this idea in your head, it's there. It's the beginning phases of it, but then you have to start to take some level of action. You have to start to direct at some level your discipline and your strictness. You have to start to turn it in a different direction. Right now, you're turning to the left. And if you want to turn to the right, you can't go far left to far right. This is not a political conversation, by the way. This is strictly an analogy. But you can't go far left to far right. You have to slowly go from left to slightly more right, to slightly more right, to slightly more right, to center, to a little more right, to right, to right, to far right. Like you have to slowly start to take those steps. So if you have an idea and you've got this little tinker in your head, you're like, oh, I want to do something different. I want to feel something different. Become aware of the potential decisions that you could make to move in that direction. Just start to pay attention to them. When it comes to losing weight or just getting healthier in general, there are a lot of different decisions you can make throughout the day. So many different decisions you can make, and just become aware of the different decisions you can make. For instance, instead of trying to flip your nutrition upside down and flip your table over and start exercising all at once, which some people can do that, and that's great. Maybe you just start by you're like, okay, I'm just paying attention to what I'm eating in the morning and fine. Don't try and change everything. I'm paying attention to what I'm putting in my coffee. Maybe I don't need to put that much creamer in my coffee. I just put a little bit. Okay, that's good. So I start with that. And then I drive to work, and generally I find the closest spot I can to the door. But today I'm paying a little bit of attention. I'm being aware of what's happening. So I'm going to start to direct my discipline. I'm like, oh, no, just park over here. A little further away. It's okay. I could take a couple more steps, get to walk a little more. Maybe I get to actually bump into somebody and meet somebody and talk to them and build a relationship with somebody. And that'll also increase my healthiness. So just being aware of what you're doing throughout the day and just making one or two handful of decisions from time to time to notch yourself in a different direction. Just to slowly nudge yourself in a different direction. Because small wins become bigger wins, and over time, as those things accumulate, it just kind of slowly becomes what you do. And you're like, okay, I'm still paying attention. I'm feeling a little bit better. I feel like my energy is going up. I feel myself getting healthier. I feel myself making better decisions and I feel good about it. And as you keep doing it, you keep making better decisions and you keep being aware. And the cycle just kind of slowly moves into this new pattern. So now again, instead of going left, you've come to the center and you're like, all right, this is good. I like this. And then you just kind of keep going. You're like, all of a sudden you're at the far right and you're like, oh, this isn't as bad. Like I thought I was going to be deprived and I thought I was going to be, miserable because I had to give up all my alcohol and I had to give up all the sugary drinks that I was drinking and I had to give up all this stuff. But over the course of 6, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it was that you made these changes, it's just now what you do. It's just now who you are. And that's just what happens instead of, oh, I'm so miserable because I gave all this up. So if you're not directing your discipline, if you're not directing the follow through with what you have inside of you, just pay attention, build some awareness. Carl Jung once said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. Currently, you are at the level of the unconscious is dictating your life and you are calling it fate. You're going, oh, I don't have the discipline. Oh, I don't have the follow through. Oh, I don't have the willpower. And at an unconscious level, you're just kind of like going through the motions and you're like, oh, well, I'll always be poor and I'll always be fat and I'll always be unhealthy and I'll never have a business and I'll never do this and it'll never be bigger. But it's only because you're not being aware of the actions that you're taking and then slowly nudging yourself in a different direction. Okay, so that's level 1, kind of step 1, if you will, if you're not directing that discipline at all. Level 2, if you've kind of started to move yourself in a direction, you're taking some action, but you're not directing it correctly, or you're not directing it in the right way. You're not directing that discipline in the right manner. Level 2 is reviewing and refining regularly. So this is, I don't want to say it's not complex, but it's another step to adding. At the beginning, we're just trying to pay attention and build awareness and then slowly make some changes. The next step is reviewing and refining. And in reviewing and refining, I like to think of it in the way that Peter Drucker said. Peter Drucker is a business, or was, I don't know if he's still alive or not, a business analyst. And he said, you can't manage what you don't measure. So essentially what people do is they start something and they start going. And for about 6 to 8 weeks, they make good progress. And then all of a sudden progress slows down or comes to a complete halt. And when that happens, people get frustrated and then they go back to doing whatever they were doing before that because they're like, well, this isn't working anymore. Well, it was working and then it did stop working, which everything will stop working eventually. That just means you need to then figure out what to do next. So that's why regular reviews and refining of those reviews is important. So regular, I would argue, is at least at a weekly basis. If not at a daily basis, daily can be just a very quick, small thing. I have what is called the 1% process, for instance. And it's just, at the end of the day, essentially asking yourself, what went well, what needs work, and then how can I get 1% better tomorrow? So very simple 3-question process that you can do at the end of every day that can take 3 to 5 minutes, not very long. What went well? Well, let's think. Here's the things that went well today, so I can carry those forward to tomorrow. What needs work? Well, this didn't work today. This sales script didn't work, and I can change that, and I can change it for tomorrow. And then how can I get 1% better? What's a discipline? How can I direct my discipline better? What skills can I build, or whatever? You don't have to do that on a daily basis. You can do that on a weekly basis. I would not extend it necessarily out to monthly. You could do it monthly, but again, the further out you extend reviews, the more likely you are to get frustrated, to slow down, and then to want to quit and give up. That doesn't mean every time you review something and you go to refine it, you completely do something different, because that's very inefficient also. Once you set a base structure, you kind of want to keep that structure as long as you're making good progress. The reviewing and refine literally means like small nudges in different directions. It's just a tiny little, well, this worked well, but it looks like we could kind of tweak something here. Instead of having 50 grams of carbs at each meal, maybe I notch it down to 45 or 40 grams of carbs at each meal. I'm not saying that you have to be a counter by any stretch, but nonetheless, that's refining. It's just like taking a small step and a small tweak and moving it just slightly, just enough. It's not, oh, I've done this plan for a week. Now let me flip over the table and do this other plan now, because you'll never get anywhere if that's the case. You want to change big plans about every 90 days, but on a weekly basis, you're talking about changing small, just making small incremental adjustments. But reviewing regularly then allows you to keep track. That way, after that 6-week period, when you start to get frustrated, you're not questioning. You know exactly what you've done. You know where you've been. You know the progress that you've made. And you probably push back past that 6-week barrier anyway, because you've paid attention to it all along. You've paid attention to your progress. You've paid attention to the steps that you've been taking. So at that level, if you feel like you've been trying things and you've been trying to become disciplined and be strict about what you're doing, but you don't feel like you're making progress, start regular reviews of what you're doing, at least weekly, just kind of paying attention to what you're doing, picking 3 questions to ask yourself and asking those questions, making sure that you have one metric to track, at least one metric to track, so that you know if you're making progress. Remember, you can't manage what you don't measure. So have a metric, give yourself a couple of questions to follow. You can use the questions that I use for the 1% process. What went well, what needs work, and how do I get 1% better tomorrow or next week if you're doing a weekly review. Okay? So that's the next step that we can take if that's where we are. The final thing, or the final category of this discipline conundrum, is that we're trying to direct our discipline. We're trying to move it. We're taking action, but we don't recognize the true barrier that is keeping us from moving forward. We keep trying new things, or we try for 6 to 8 weeks and then we stop because we get frustrated or something pops up. And then a couple months later, we try again, and then we get frustrated, and then we stop, and so on and so forth. And we keep looking at everything around us, and we're like, that thing doesn't work, that thing doesn't work, schedule keeps getting in the way, kids keep having problems, this keeps happening, things happen at work, so on and so forth. And we just keep pointing at everything around us when we don't recognize that we are the problem. It is us that is standing in our own way. And this is one of the hardest things to recognize, and also one of the most liberating things to recognize. And I say liberating because the more you take responsibility, the more that you recognize that you're the barrier, then you go, cool. This is all in my hands then. Then I'm the one that I'm really steering the ship. That is not to say that external circumstances don't happen. That is not to say that COVID won't come and the government will shut everybody down. And it's not to say that people won't get sick and people won't die and schedules won't change. And it's not to say that all of that won't happen. All of that, of course, is true. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And that's the question that most people don't ask, because most people are like, wow, they did this and this happened and that happened. All true, fine. But what are you going to do about it? And that's when it comes down to not recognizing true barriers, that's the question. What are you going to do about it? If you've been trying things, then you have reached your ceiling, your current ceiling. Maybe not ceiling is the way to put it, maybe comfort level. So you could say on one end, maybe you've reached your current ceiling, or on the other end, maybe you've reached your comfort barrier. So, for instance, if you're in business and you've decided that you're going to try this new marketing campaign and you're going to do 2 posts on social media a day, and that's your new marketing campaign. I'm just laying out something basic. And you do it for 4 weeks. And after 4 weeks, you start to get bored and you start to feel like things aren't happening. At that level, it is not that things aren't happening. It's that your current ceiling to persistence has been reached. In other words, maybe you're usually in the habit of only doing things for a certain amount of time, and then you don't persist past that certain amount of time. So your persistent muscle isn't built up because in this instance, if you're going to do social media, it is going to take much longer than 1 month to see any traction. It's going to take at least 90 months to even recognize if it's going to be working, and then it's going to take probably 6 months to 12 months to start to gain some level of traction, depending on what you're doing. But nonetheless, whenever you feel yourself getting antsy or getting, unfocused, it's generally because that persistence muscle is not there. You've reached the ceiling of your persistence muscle. That's one problem many entrepreneurs have, is that they don't just keep going. They don't just keep following through with things. They do something for some short amount of time, and then they get bored or they lose focus or whatever happens. They say, oh, this thing isn't working, and they veer off in another direction. Same thing that happens with people in their health. They try something for some period of time, then they lose focus, and then they veer off in another direction. So one strategy is just to keep going. To decide that you're going to do for at least 90 days, whatever that thing you're going to do is, whatever the plan is that you've laid out, I'm doing it for 90 days. Every week during that 90 days, I'm going to review, and then I'm going to make some small refinement, and then the next week I'm going to review, and then I'm going to refine, but I'm going to keep doing, no matter what, for at least 90 days. I'm going to keep going, okay? That's going to build up that persistence muscle. That's one muscle that many people just don't have. It's also a muscle that many people don't think about. Because you're busy pointing at something else. You're busy pointing at some other thing that is standing in your way. Instead of recognizing you just won't keep going. Your current habit is to stop or quit or get frustrated and move a different direction. The goal is to change that habit. The goal is to just keep going. So whatever the thing is that you're doing, tell yourself you're going to do it for 90 days, at least 90 days, and then do it. Follow through. Persist. Keep going. Keep showing up. Keep moving forward. And then at the end of the 90 days, it doesn't mean you stop the thing. You evaluate, how did it work? How did it go? Probably just make a few small tweaks and then just keep going. Because if it's something that you started, then it's likely something that you believe is going to make a change in your life. And therefore, there's probably not much reason to take it out of your life. There's reason to just keep doing it, to keep showing up. Exercise, nutrition, all of these things, of course, in business, marketing strategy, a sales strategy, a new sales script, whatever it is, all of those things, all probably things you need to keep doing. So after that 90 days, it doesn't mean you stop it. It just means that at that point, it's just automatically a thing that you do at whatever level it is you're currently doing. And then you just keep adjusting it and keep moving it and keep moving forward. Okay. Many people just lack the persistence. Their current identity is wrapped around not being persistent, not staying focused and being persistent and continuing to move forward and continuing to follow through on this new thing that they're trying. It's not because the kids' soccer schedule all of a sudden popped up. All of a sudden they had soccer. You knew that was going to happen. It's not because this project at work all of a sudden changed things. So Your exercise routine has to change. Yeah, fine. Your exercise routine has to change. But guess what? You told yourself you were going to exercise 3 days a week. So follow through. Do it. Figure it out. Problem solve. Go. Just do it. And if you just do that regularly and you just problem solve and you just work through it, then eventually it'll just be what you do. Now you are directing your discipline toward this thing over here instead of that thing over there. Instead of sitting on the couch, you are now directing your discipline purposely toward the thing that you're trying to accomplish, that you want to do. Now you are the kind of person that directs your discipline toward exercise instead of directs it toward the couch. You are the kind of person that directs your discipline to better sales calls instead of sitting there moping about nobody calling you, or whatever it is. So that's the crux of the thing is, as you go through this, you're going to feel this urge to stop. You're going to feel this urge to quit. And probably, if you're a human being, you've already quit or stopped or got frustrated and just gave up on something at least once in your life, at least once. All of the seminars that I've done, I ask that question, and always everybody raises their hand. Always. So, doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a human. Welcome to the club. If that's you, then the goal is to just keep going. Because when you feel that resistance, when you feel that urge to quit, recognize it is just because your current self wants you to go back. Your current self wants you to sit your ass down on that couch. Your current self doesn't want to have to call new people and try new sales scripts and try new social media posts and so on and so forth. It is hard to do that. It is hard for every human being to do that, but the more you do it, the less hard it becomes. The next time you change something, though, it's going to be hard again, and you're going to have to push through it again. But the more you build that persistence muscle, the more you build that direction muscle, and you're directing your discipline and your strictness and your follow through toward this thing that you want to do, the more likely you are to actually do it. And then you just kind of are able to do things in your life. Whereas before you were like, man, I can't do anything. But now, guess what? You're the kind of person who can do shit because you've learned how to direct your discipline. You've learned how to direct the things, the energy inside of you instead of just let it sit sloppily and lazily around. And that's kind of the point in life because guess what? We get one, not any other, at least conscious life outside of this one. So make it count. Cool. Make sure you share this with anybody else who is also having trouble directing their own discipline. And until next time, here's to your 1% growth every day.